In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to use a Gaussian blur in Adobe Photoshop. Hello and welcome back to another Inspiration Cam video. We're going to be looking at a Gaussian blur function and how we can use this function within our projects. So first, I'm just going to come and open up our stock image. So we want blur stock 1. It will be an image of this man with the background that's in focus. I wanted to pick this image because normally there's a distinction. The background is more blurred and the foreground elements in focus. This image is not like that, so it will work perfectly for this lesson. So first, I just want to explain what a Gaussian blur is. It's probably best described as a thing that makes everything blur into eventually what is nothing. So if you think about a horizon, as you look on the horizon, eventually things blur and they disappear. That is essentially a Gaussian blur. When we use it within Photoshop, we can use it to reduce harsh edges, and it's a great filter to master and use in photo manipulations or when you're combining different images. So the Gaussian blur is actually a filter, so you would find it up in filter and blur along with the other blur filters. You can see Gaussian blur. But first, I just want to cut this man out of our image. When you're applying a blur, you want to apply the blur to certain areas, specific areas. In our case, we just want to apply it to the background. We don't want to apply it to the man. So I'm just going to go ahead and speed up the video whilst I cut the man out with a pen tool. Okay, so there we have our selection made on our man. What I'm going to do quickly is just save this selection. So I'm going to come up to select, save selection, and I'm just going to call it man. Now we can load that selection at any point. If you're not familiar with selection and using the pen tool, then we do have a dedicated course on selection. So go ahead, take that course. It's fully extensive and goes through all the selection tools. Right, so now we have our selection saved. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to deselect. So I'm going to press Command or Control and D on my keyboard. And I'm just going to duplicate the background layer. So I'm just going to press Command and Control and J. So there we have a new layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to Select, and I'm going to come up to Load Selection. And we're just going to go on the selection of man and hit OK. And there we go, our selection is loaded back in. So we have the selection of our man and we have our layer here. So what I want to do is I just want to put our man onto a new layer. So with the selection active, I'm just going to hit Control and Command and J, and you will see now we have the man on the layer. So if I turn these two layers off, you can see we just have the man. So now on this middle layer, I'm just going to rename this and call this man, and this landscape. It's always a good idea to name your layers so you can quickly find what's what. And now I want to blur the background layer. So I'm going to come up to filter, and I'm going to come up to blur, down to blur, and I'm going to go to Gaussian blur. So you can see straight away that the background's blurred, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this off, turn this down to 0.1 so it's not really affecting our image. There's a few options here you want to be aware of. Preview. So if we turn preview off and adjust the blur, you can see that we don't see the preview on our actual image. If we turn the preview on, when we put our blur up, you can see that it actually applies it to our image. I would advise to leave the preview on. It's much easier to see the blur applied to the whole image and how it's going to look. Right, so with that in mind, I'm just going to go down to 0, and I'm just going to bring this radius slider up, and we can change the amount of pixels our Gaussian blur is. So you can start to see how it's looking as we increase that. So there you see we have a highly blurred background. You can see obviously it's not true. The further into the distance, the more blurred the landscape would be, so around his feet is not correct. But that is a general overview of how you apply a Gaussian blur. It's very good to blur out backgrounds, to blend different images together, and just a generally good tool to use. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK there to apply the blur. What I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to apply a layer mask to this landscape layer so we can reduce the effect of the blur around the feet and create a more realistic result. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the layer mask icon from the layer panel down here. You will see the mask is available now on our layer, on our landscape layer. Make sure you click on the mask. We want to come over to the gradient tool and we want to select our gradient. Now what we want to do is we want to go from black to transparent. So we're just going to turn this down, and then what we want to do is reduce the blur. So if you don't know about layer masks, again we have another course dedicated to masking, but what a layer mask is going to do is going to hide effect. Anything that's black on the mask will be hidden, anything that's white on the mask will be revealed. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a gradient mask, and you can see there it brings the legs back into focus and makes the background more blurred. I'm just going to undo, Command and Control and Z, and I'm just going to apply this a little bit higher. There you go. So I'm going to turn this on and off so you can see the blur more around the head and the clouds, and there is now no blur around the legs and the foreground elements. So there you go, that's how you use Gaussian Blur in Adobe Photoshop. Thank you very much for joining us in this lesson. I will see you in the next video. Thank you for learning with Inspiration Clan. I hope you enjoyed this video. To view the full course, visit our website inspirationclan.com. The link is in the description. For more free tutorials, like and subscribe.